Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, May 23rd, I believe it is. Yes, May 23rd. And we've got a mailbag show for you today. We opened up the mailbag to Irish Sports Daily customers on the Irish Sports Daily message board, and they came to us with some questions. Vamos Irish, of course, hit us with a question. Maya, the goddess of Hermes, daughter of Hermes. We got Zeus going on in here talking about the Romans and the Roman Empire. So he's got a question for us at the end. So we're gonna talk about that. Questions about the offensive line, questions about road woes, and Dallas Golden rankings, and all sorts of other types of questions as well. So we're going to be doing that on the show today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If this is your first time catching our show, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so whenever it is we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below if you prefer the audio format to this show. And before we kick off, we are going to mention once again the special provided by ESQClothing.com and Ge Wang. He is selling the Play Like a Champion Today sport coat that is displayed here for everyone to see. It is the sport coat that the players wear on the player walk. It is a great item for your father, your brother, your husband, whoever it may be. Never look better than this. It's going to be retailed at $795 normally, coming in at $495 for you. So that's about 40% off. We ran this special. It's going to the end of May. We only ran it for one weekend during Blue and Gold weekend. We're extending it now. If you are interested in buying this and getting on board with this good special from ESQ Clothing, hit up a tuner at esqclothing.com. That's ATOERNER at esqclothing.com, or give them a call at 312-757-8500. That's 312-757-8500 to get your Play Like a Champion sport coat at the discount till the end of May. So jump on that. Father's Day is coming up. You're going to want to do that. Jamie, how's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah, we're doing good. Everyone's feeling good. We're having a good day. The chat's going off. Rajon is here. Rajon, I feel bad because Rajon was not really around during the ad reads for the last show. I thought last show's ad reads were really good. I felt like I brought my A game to that. Even in the off season, we're ramping up, right? We're still staying sharp with the ad reads. Jason Smith is here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. CFB Hertz says, I need that jacket. Been playing a bunch of Hades 2, but definitely not like a champion. Yeah, man, you got to wear it while you're playing. You got to play Hades like a champion. So that's CFB Hertz is going to get on that jacket. Greg and Jamie, question from Jacob Paulus. Now that both the NHL and NBA are in the conference finals, who are you rooting for to win it all in each? Do you have a take on this, Jamie?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm rooting for the Pacers in the NBA. I really don't care about any of the teams that are left, to be honest.
Yeah.
I appreciate I like Anthony Edwards. I mean, how can you not appreciate him? But I mean, I don't really like the T-Wolves or anything like that. Like, I hate Gobert. Like, I'm just not a Gobert guy. So, and then Luka, total appreciate him too. But I mean, I don't want to see Kyrie win. Screw Kyrie. So, I mean, I would say that, don't really care if the Celtics win it or not. I know you do. I know you hate the Celtics. Pacers is just a good underdog story. Like, they never win. Right? They never win. So I just think it would be a kind of a cool story for them because they don't really have, I mean, I guess Halliburton and Siakam, I mean, those are good. They're good players, but they're not like super duper stars. So that's kind of like, it would be kind of like a team win. So I'm going for them there. And then the NHL, oh, man, I think I'm going for, weirdly, I think I'm going for the Rangers. I think when my team Vancouver is out of it, I usually go weirdly for the big market team in the
Yeah.
state, not because of like I want these teams to do well, whatever. They already got all the advantages, but it's good for the NHL, and I just want the NHL to do well. So it's like the Rangers win. It's like, well, everything's stick up. So that's why.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I don't even know who's in the NHL playoffs at this point. I know the Canucks are out. That's what I know about that. I don't know who's playing. I don't have. I do not care one bit about the hockey thing. No offense, but it's just I don't have the bandwidth for something like that. As far as the NBA, anyone but the Celtics is really where we're at. Once the Lakers get eliminated, we shift into no Celtics, no Clippers, and then anything after that is fine. Whatever happens. I would love the Pacers. Jacob Paula says the Pacers gave away game one. 100%. That's unbecoming. You got to be able to close the game out in that situation. You're 97% to win the game, and you end up blowing it on the road. It's just like they're going to get blown out in game two. They're going to lose by like 27 probably. And so that's just I hate to see that. I don't like that at all. Rick Carlisle, get it together. He's been in the NBA a lot, far too long to make a mistake or have his team make a mistake like that at the end. It's Minnesota, Dallas. It doesn't really matter to me. I don't have Kyrie's a weird dude, but that's fine, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with being a weird guy. Luka,
No, he's more than a weird guy. He's a loser. Kyrie's a definite loser of a person. No one should root for him. I hate how it's always like, man, this guy's so skilled. He's a loser of a person.
he
Like
is very skilled. I'll give him that. There's no question about
man,
it.
what a finisher. Below rim finisher. What a great guy. Also a loser of a person. Screw him. I don't, because of that, don't want Dallas anywhere near a championship. That guy doesn't deserve another championship. He already got his ring. Get him out of here.
It's got his ring. Eject Kyrie from the discourse. It's fine. Have a take, Jamie. We don't mind that at all. Zach Davis says has me saying unbecoming in my day to day. It's one of the best things. Is unbecoming. It's a good way to describe things. I think it's just like we got to be better in our day to day. So that's where I'm at. Don't really care if it's Dallas or if it's the Timberwolves.
T-Wolves.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. The T-Wolves would be fun just because I think
they've never won, so I think
never
that
won.
is a cool thing.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah,
I will admit to that.
Although Douglas Farmer never going to shut up about it if they win, so he will not.
But you know what? That's
Twitter
fine.
Will be relentless. Yes.
Listen.
Yes.
When you stand for the Timberwolves, you get it right. If they make it happen, then that's what comes with it. So that's all good. All right, let's get to the questions. First question comes from Keenan Knight. Assuming he continues to win, how many more years would you expect Marcus Freeman to choose to stay at Notre Dame? Do you sense he would want to retire here, jump to be the Ohio State head coach if Ryan Day leaves, or take an NFL head coach DC job with more pay? I don't know that would be like a ton more pay. I think it's interesting that he says continues to win, like he's on some sort of track to move on to another job, which I don't think is correct, right?
Not right now, no.
He's done fine, right? Like 9-4, 10-3. Like that's not terrible by any means. It's not going to get him fired at all. In fact, people are talking extensions, which is another thing, which is like, why are we talking about that? Like I think he has a 6-year deal. He is not anywhere near.
No, you need to have it for recruiting and stuff.
You need to have it for recruiting, but like he's not even halfway through yet. Like after this year, he'll be halfway through. After that, we'll see where it's at. So I don't think it is a big year for him. Absolutely. But anyway, let's say, how well do you think he would have to do at Notre Dame to go to a place like Ohio State if he chooses to do so, or go to the NFL? I don't think he would go to the NFL as a DC. I think he's either going to be a head coach at this point or he'll be nothing.
Yeah.
So how well would he have to do at Notre Dame to be a candidate for a vacant Ohio State position or a candidate for a vacant NFL head coach position?
I mean, he'd at least have to like get Notre Dame into the top 4 teams. Like, and now obviously that means like winning a playoff game, right? Or like 2 basically, right? Like winning 2 playoff games. So I think that's kind of where they were at, because they would just look at it and be like, well, why Ohio State wants to, the reason why they're investing so much right now into like, they're getting like Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Downs and Julian
Right.
Sand from the portal. The reason why they're doing that, the reason why they're like, well, we'll pay whatever it takes to get Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator and all this kind of stuff too. The reason why they're doing that is because they're like putting all their chips in and they want to win. And like they want to, if they don't win the national championship this year, like it's going to be a problem there. Like they have everything in place for them to win, which is a little bit unfair because it's like you might just lose to like a really great Georgia team or something like that. But it's also just the realities of it, right? Because Michigan just won. They better like destroy Michigan this year. Like that's 100%. That has to happen. So I think like, Ryan Day could either win and leave or not win and get fired or whatever. That could happen. But Notre Dame would have to have a great year this year for that to happen, where Ohio State opened up and then he would possibly go there.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like he is very much like dug in on Notre Dame and he has gotten like a ton of support. He's gotten a lot of support. Like that is something that I think probably goes a little bit overlooked, is that Notre Dame has, it's not that they can't do more or whatever, and they're not, they've had things, but they've really, especially in the last like year and a half, have really like put stuff in place to be like, well, the next guy after Brian Kelly, it was like whoever it was, like was going to get this support because they didn't want anything like that happening again. So he's gotten a lot of support. So he doesn't have a lot to complain about, other than like, man, it's harder to recruit at Notre Dame than it is Ohio State or whatever, right? So, I mean, I don't know. It's so different. He's young, like he's 38 years old. I don't know, like coaching today, it's not the same as like it takes more out of you than it did before.
Yeah.
I mean, he could be like 48 and be like, man, I got to take a break or whatever. Like, I don't know. Right. So I really don't know. This is like one of these, like totally like so much could happen over this time. And I think like, I think like Roy Williams at Kansas is a good example of like, he said no to North Carolina a bunch of times until he said yes, finally.
Yeah.
And then did it. Right. So I don't know what's going to happen with Marcus Freeman, but I think everyone should just hope that he does really, really well at Notre Dame. I think if he wins a national championship, then he'll never leave Notre Dame. That's just my opinion. If he comes to that, he becomes a guy who wins a national championship at Notre Dame, I don't think he'll ever leave, because people are so desperate for a national championship at Notre Dame. It's like if he's getting support now, it'll continue to grow. So I think that's probably the key, is that if he wins, he's just going to decide to like stay until he decides I'm out, right? Like that's the kind of thing. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's obviously a great representative of the university. He's someone who really gets the program, who's like obviously very supportive of the other athletic programs. He's works really, really hard at the job, and I think, gets it. So I think there's a reason why just like everybody's rooting for him. And
Yeah.
I hope he's at Notre Dame for a long time.
It's interesting you say that about winning and staying, because I feel like if he won, that would be he's definitely, I don't want to say definitely leaving, but like it would be much more of a chance just because I think you do it and then he'll have the opportunities. Like that's when the opportunities come. Cause like you would have to A, be undefeated, B, the team would have to be like really, really good. Like they'd have to be awesome. And then to win 4 playoff games like that, because I believe they do have to win 4. It's just like, man, that his juice would never be higher. It's like you said, he does kind of he would have to move on at some point, or at least try to do something else because he's so young, right? Like give it a chance. So it's interesting. I'm not saying you're wrong or I'm right or whatever. It's just like I viewed it differently, but I could see a situation where it's like, you know what? I'm staying here. My family, like he has so many, the other part is he has so many young kids. Like they're going to have roots in the community too. Pulling them out would be fairly difficult. Rajon makes a good point. Let's say Notre Dame goes to the playoffs this year. Let's say they're the 5, right? Just devil's advocate. They win that game. They play in the 4-5 game. They win that game, and then they're in the Final Four. And let's say in the Final Four, they're up against Ohio State, and they beat Ohio State in that situation. But Notre Dame loses the national championships. Then they would fire Ryan Day, and then it's like they're coming after Marcus Freeman. 100%. Like so that is I think Rajon, like that specific scenario, I think would get it done.
Well, I think if Notre Dame would have beat them this year, and you added that to what already happened with them at Michigan, Ryan Day would have got fired, and they probably would have hired, or they tried to at least hire Marcus Freeman. Like that would have happened. So
you think it would have been Marcus? Because
100%, 100%.
Even if everything else stays the same, if everything else stays the same, if they lost to Louisville and then they beat Clemson, or they lost to Clemson,
yeah, because they're probably finishing 11-2, and they beat Ohio State, and it's just like they're looking at that and just. And also, too, they beat Ohio State and they're 11-2. Obviously, their roster isn't as good as Ohio State's.
No, for sure. Yeah.
And I think he would have got it. He would have got a ton of support for it. And I really don't see. Unless there was a real push to get like Caleb DeBoer or whatever or something like that. Then who else where they get? I can't really think of anyone else because now's not the time that they would hire Luke Fickell. It's like he kind of just it's one of those things where Fickell, like his window was there and then it was over.
Yeah. Like the shine has definitely come off that shoe for sure. Nick Dean says, does anyone think Marcus is happy at Notre Dame and doesn't want to move? I do.
Yeah, he's happy at Notre Dame.
He is very happy at Notre Dame. Everything I've heard is like he loves it. Like there is no front with him regarding his admiration for the university. Truly, like if you have to think of him, like he's young, but he is an old soul. Like he comes from like everything that Notre Dame is about. He is about. Like he is a young person, but he is not a like trendy this like I don't know how to describe it, like Gen Z guy. Like he is a disciple of Tressel. Like he loves what Notre Dame is and what Notre Dame stands for and what everything they are offering. Like I think he's 100% happy at Notre Dame. I don't think there's any question that he isn't. Nick Dean says his family seems happy at Notre Dame too. So maybe I'm misreading his comment. Maybe he's I don't know, doesn't want to move. It seems like he was saying that he wouldn't be happy, but I
think he was saying that he was like he thinks he's happy. I think that's what
yeah. Okay, all right. So we think Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame are in a good place. All right, next question from Drew Brennan. What gives you confidence that Marcus Freeman can hopefully reverse the sluggish road outings we have seen in the past from the Irish? Does Mike Denbrock help alleviate your worries around all this?
Man, I got to tell you, I'm sick of the road questions. No offense, Drew, but like I just kind of feel like that became like the whole thing, and like it was like they just stunk on the road. And I mean, they weren't better on the road, but I think there was like the factors that went into it were a lot of it had to do with they're playing teams that had guys up front that were way better than their guards. That's just what it was. So like, and then also too, like, because if we talk about like the sluggish starts, right? So think about the Duke game and you can look at early on in the game too, right? Like the interior of the line did not play well. Like they got their butts kicked. So that was one thing. Also too, they had 3 healthy receivers, and one was a guy who like barely played the rest of the year in Tobias Merriweather, really, right? So like he basically like lost his job by playing 70 plays in that game. So there's that. Louisville kicked their butts up front, and when they played that Louisville game, were like switching in Shrouth in that game because they were like not happy with the guards. So like that's kind of where they were at in that game. And then I mean, same thing in Clemson. The guards and Zeke Correll got their butt kicked. And even go back to like Louisville, if you look at like the offense or the things that went wrong in the Clemson game, I mean, I could pick out whatever. I don't want to pick on one guy, but there was one guy, if he made like 2 tackles, it's like all of a sudden it's like, wow, they really started pretty good on defense. Like that was
DJ Brown had a bad game. But
yes,
we just say
he
had a bad game. He did not play well in that one.
Yeah, but I just feel like whatever. It's like because he's gone and we're just piling on. So I don't really want to just like, and everybody remembers the Ohio State game. And I don't want to keep piling on the guy, like whatever. But I mean, it's true. He was really, and I mean, you can go to the Louisville game. It's like he's got Jawar Jordan in the hole.
Yeah.
And he just misses that tackle and it's a house call, like, and then plus the Louisville game, it's like a bad ball by Hartman on the very first drive, like throws the pick and stuff. It's like, I mean, I don't know if that's got to do with them not being ready in the game. It's a bad play by Hartman, who's like having flashbacks of the last time he stunk at Louisville, right? So like, I don't know. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. If you're looking at that and you don't play well on the road, you should look at solutions. But I think a lot of it was personnel driven.
Yeah, like circumstance too. Like, you're playing better. It happened that they were playing the better teams and the better defenses. I think the question is not necessarily about the road, because last offseason we got a ton of how many that you just replaced the red zone defense with.
Yes, this is this year's red zone defense.
So I guess the question is like, is there going to be another fatal flaw on this particular team, right? The 22 team, it was a lot of things, but like there was one really bad, and then they were literally, like you say, they were literally the worst in the nation in red zone defense, literally the worst. They were a very bad road team, right? And that turned out to be a fatal flaw for that last year's team. Is there going to be one this year? And like, I mean, we never would have picked out the road stuff, and we never would have picked out the road or the red zone stuff. So I guess I was going to ask, like, if you could pick one, but like, it's usually something you would never pick. And that's why like it's hard to do that. But just like, that's the thing, is can they avoid that kind of fatal flaw within the team? And I think that's kind of what the spirit of the question is. And it's just like, he's asking it, but because of the road stuff, because that was the issue last year. But like,
no, whatever. Like, I'm not even just saying, because everybody, I know this is like, it's on the mind of whatever, and I don't mean shots at you at all. I'm just saying, like, it's like this thing. It's like it's not like, man, they gotta change the they gotta fly earlier, or they gotta do that. It's like not like
better speeches or better.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of these things where it's like, guys, we got to get up on the road here. We're not excited enough. Everybody thinks that. And I like, whatever. I don't want to point out, but there was someone who like just commented on column I wrote last week or 2 weeks ago or something like that, who was like, you're always stouting the stats, but you never talk about heart or whatever. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm sorry, like everybody wants it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, some guys don't want it, but for the most part, everybody wants it. Like TCU didn't get their butts kicked by Georgia in the national championship game because Georgia wanted it more. Like that's not a thing, right? So in the end, there's a lot of other like pieces that like that's why there's analysis and why you do it and why it's just not as simple as being like, guys, they just didn't come to play. Like, because I think there's very few times, and I know this gets brought up a lot, but it's very much like a fan thing to be like, these guys didn't come to play today. And I mean, sometimes that's the case, but I don't think that was the case in all those games where it's like, man, they couldn't get up for these road games. I just think it was like the matchups were not great for them. And even if you look at like that NC State game too, and what another thing with these apps, all the teams that they struggled. They're like, man, the offense can't go on in this game. It's like, well, these other team had like NFL corners, and Notre Dame didn't have receivers who could get open.
Yeah,
and they played them a certain way, and they couldn't do anything about it. So, I mean, if I was going to say anything with this, if I was going to point to something prior to the season, I'm going to look at the offensive tackles, and I'm going to look at where they are, because they're new offensive tackles, and we don't know how good they're going to be. And guess what? They're playing like the top teams they're playing. The 3 of the 4 top teams they're playing have legit dudes at edge rusher. So you got to block those guys. And if they struggle in those games, people are going to be like, man, this is that, whatever. And it's like, a lot of the times the real story is just going to be like, their Jimmies were better than Notre Dame's Joes at this spot. And that's why they struggled for this. And they didn't do enough there. So maybe, Mike, in that sense, bringing it back to Drew's question, maybe that's something that Mike Denbrock can help with, because he can help alleviate some of that stuff, because it's like, well, we're going to do this instead to deal with it, but I think a lot of it is like, I think when it comes down to it, a lot of it is players and what they can do and what they're capable of, and not motivation.
Yeah. I think the Denbrock piece plays a part in that. It'll play a part in every game, not necessarily the road, right? But just being able to solve problems and being able to be like, okay, they're taking this away, we need to go with this. Or we need to be setting this up, or we need to be emphasizing this straight away so that we don't struggle early. Like, it could be something like that, but that's not a road thing. It's an every game thing, right? That's why you want a good OC, right? That's why you pay him all that money. Next question from Silverback. With our own Matt Freeman establishing himself as the premier on-site Notre Dame sports journalist, do you see him staying with ISD or moving on to, say, cover the NFL? What kind of package will it likely take to keep Matt? I don't know what kind of package it will take for him. Could you see Matt on the Bengals beat? Could you see that?
No. I couldn't see that. I mean, I don't think Matt would have any interest in that. I mean, I will say though, it's true. Matt is whatever, and I know there's obviously bias, whatever. He's a good friend of mine, and obviously, I've worked with him for many years. But my opinion, he's the best at what he does. Best combination of covering the team and recruiting. There's no one even close to him. I know it's biased, but I just really think it is, and I think he's a really big reason why people should subscribe to ISD.
Matt is the man, right? I'm not trying to get all I'm not trying to get all like blowing up Matt here, because I don't even think he would appreciate it. He doesn't want that. He wants to stay in the shadows and in the background and just come with the information. No, Matt is awesome. Matt is like literally. He does a great job. I echo Jamie, right? And I'm not. This has nothing to do with whether he's the best or not. Matt is awesome, and no shade to anyone else. We're not doing that. Matt does a great job for us. He does so much for us. He makes everything happen. he's invaluable to Irish sports.
Matt's going to now cut this part of the podcast.
Yeah, he's going to cut it out.
Just right? Bring it up anytime we
or maybe he'll cut it up. It'll be a hot read. Why is Matt so good?
Yeah.
So, all right. Next question from Sloth. I know Greg started the last podcast episode saying he wouldn't quibble with Jamie's ISD Fab 50 rankings, but exactly in what range would you rank Dallas Golden? Top 10, top 25? Jamie can use earmuffs to avoid the criticism. We talked about this on the last show. To be honest, like I do understand where Jamie's coming from in terms of, like, we know Notre Dame wants him to be a corner, and he doesn't. His physicality as far as a tackler just isn't there right now, and I don't have a problem with it. I understand why that is, and so I don't hold it against him. But if I was putting together rankings like Jamie is, then I probably would, right? Like you have to do that because other guys have good film too. And I couldn't say like top 10, top 25 or whatever, because I haven't looked at every, like the guys that Notre Dame is not involved with who have committed to other schools. Like I don't watch them, right? Like I don't do a rankings. Like I don't need to do that. Right. So I haven't studied those guys like Jamie has. So that's why it's like, for me, I will respect Jamie's ranking at 46 where he is. I think that just generally he needs to be in the top 50 because he's that caliber of a player. And it kind of gets to the point where rank him second or rank him 46th. He is a very, very good football player, and he can do so much for the Notre Dame football team in so many ways. His ranking is just kind of unimportant, right? Because he can, if he's ranked 20th, I think his impact will be the same as if he's ranked 46th, if that makes sense. It doesn't matter. He can do everything. So I don't have a problem with Jamie's ranking. Jamie did defend it, and his reasoning was sound, and so I'm totally fine with it if he wants to put him where he did. I just think, like, I view Dallas Golden as a kind of a program changing talent. I view this is what I'll say. I view his talent as program changing more so than like Ivan Taylor, which isn't a shot at Ivan Taylor. It is not at all. I just think Dallas Golden is kind of special in that way, and he has an intangible thing, in my opinion, that kind of makes me gravitate to him. He has my attention more so than other guys, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense to people. Do you want to say any comment on that, Jamie?
No, I think that's totally fine. Like, he's your guy. Like, I think, go in for your guy. I also think that, it should be mentioned that, like, I don't think he's in anyone else's top 50 out of like these other sites, and I have him in the top 50. So
that's a disgrace. It's a disgrace, and people need to publicly apologize when it comes time. When the time comes, they need to be public, and their mea culpas need to be they need to be loud and clear. They've made a mistake, and you hate to see that. All right, CFB hurts. Let me blow this up so I can read it better. Okay, there was an article about a month ago where Matt Rule talked about essentially fielding a 95-player roster by using NIL to cover tuition costs for the final 10 or so players. Considering how few Notre Dame players entered the portal after spring, do you think Notre Dame has similar plans? I just have a hard time understanding why we would have 5-ish guys either medically retire or enter the portal in fall when they won't be able to play for their new team if we aren't doing something like that.
I mean, I think this is one of these things in theory that it's like, man, this sounds great. Like, why wouldn't you just pay for like these 10 extra guys? It's like, well, first of all, 95 guys is a lot to have on a roster. And like, no one wants to be 86 to 95. No one wants to be that. And even if you're looking at where, some of these guys are too. Like, so what happens if these guys that you're like paying for, and then you're like, man, this guy can't play, and he's one of those guys, and you're like, this guy won't be a guy, and then you're just gonna like, all right, man, the NILs run out, and then just cut him, and that's like, well, this guy who walked on is now gonna go into the transfer portal, that is gonna do this, and also too, like, there's 10 extra guys that want to go to Nebraska, like maybe, but really, I mean, even I don't even know
Probably
if
not.
there's probably not. And I don't even know if there's like 10 extra guys that want to go to Alabama, because no one, like I said, no one wants to be the very end of a 95 person roster. Right. So I don't know. Like, I could easily see this being like, you know what, we're going to be like a couple over. And these are some guys that we want to, have. And I think I do think it is kind of a good workaround for it. So I think, like, think about where, it obviously all worked out, but there was a point in time where JD Bertrand was going to possibly be on academic scholarship because they were like, they didn't know if they were going to have a room for him in the 2019 class. And then with Maris Leaf, I was like, well, he might not be able to enroll until this time because he would have to be like, I guess, kind of like the first gray shirt for Notre Dame at that time. And that was like something that they talked about. Like, people asked Brian Kelly about it on, signing day when it happened, and it all worked out and they didn't have to do that. But just imagine they did. That's a perfect example of just being like, well, here's 2 extra guys that we want to have there. And I think that's fine. But I think when you're talking about like 10 or 20 or whatever, it's just like the old days where, like, there was unlimited scholarships, and like, and Notre Dame had like 100 guys, and there was guys who were going to Notre Dame instead of being like starting on Purdue. They were like the 4th or 5th team for Notre Dame.
Jamie O'Hara.
Yeah. But like, that's just one of those things where it's like that stuff. People don't want to be there just at that program just to be like, man, I got to be a part of this program now. It's just people are looking at it's why the transfer portal exists, because they're looking at other opportunities to play. And if you're just like that one extra guy, I think people are usually cool with it. If it's 10 extra guys, I just don't see that being a thing that's ever going to happen, because those guys at the very end aren't going to want to do that.
It's one thing to be, like you said, it's one thing to be like 1 or 2, but like 10 people, it's like, why would somebody sign up for that? Right. Like, why would someone want to kind of be involved in that situation? Like, those are the guys that are trying to get out, not trying to come in. So, I don't know. I mean, there's so many like variations to this and unintended consequences to the college football landscape that are coming up now. Like that there's revenue sharing is apparently like in the works now, which on its face is like a fair thing, right? Makes sense. On the other hand, I just think there's going to be unintended consequences to that, to the players that are just, it's not going to be like, for a lot of them, it's not going to be a great thing. And I think that now that the ball is rolling, I think we've kind of seen, like, it's not a great thing for a lot of people. And it's a very good thing for some, it's a great thing for some, not a great thing for others. And it's just like, but the cat's out of the bag. The dog caught the car, and now everyone's just kind of scrambling. Jaden Rashada's suing Florida, right? Because they're lying to him about NIL, right? Like, do we think that's going to be the last one? No. Do you think at some point, like, what will Iowa do with a Caden Proctor situation where he leaves, takes money, and then leaves again, right? Like, is a player going to get sued at some point? There's just like,
I think that's a guarantee it's going to happen.
Yeah. So like,
that's
it's
going to happen at some point.
And who's going to protect that player, right? Like, it's one thing for the university to have a strong lawyer team, but now a player, like, lawyers, like big time lawyers, cost a lot of money. So it's just, I don't know, man. It's about to get it's about to get, I don't want to say ugly. The sport is becoming unrecognizable to our generation, and it just is what it is. Like, it's not even something that it makes me mad or unhappy or whatever. It's just like I have to come to grips with the fact that the sport that I grew up with is just, it doesn't exist anymore. It's just gone.
Yeah.
And you just got to enjoy the games, and you got to enjoy what you see on the field, because all the other stuff,
Well,
it's just,
I mean, you should point out that this stuff was going on like way before, and there's the the thing with Cam Newton and like Mississippi State
100%
giving his
for
dad
sure.
250
Yeah.
G's, like that kind of thing was been going on for a long time. It's just like basically they just made us think about it because it was like that was you know, because they were bitter about how that went, right? So there's it's just going to be it's just what is just going to eventually lead to is just there is going to be some sort of you know, unionized effort in CBA basically for these players, and it's just going to go that way because it's just that's just where it's going to lead to
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's all gray area. Even though it's supposed to be like more cut and dry now, it's there's still so much gray area that, and that's why like the Rashada thing can happen.
Yeah, and I think that it's true in that, like, there's going to be unionized, and there's going to be, you know, a players union and things of that nature. I think, though, it's I don't see a scenario where, like, we sit here one day. I mean, whatever. I guess what I'm saying is, like, it's never going to get figured out ever. There's always going to be some problem. There's always going to be some look at the playoff. They can never find a solution for how they want to crown a champion in college football. And that's just that. Now there's like money involved, there's agents involved, there's conference commissioners involved, there's all of these power brokers involved in this. There's always going to be some problem. There's always going to be some thing that they're quibbling over. And like, it's always been the case, right? Like, to your point, but we didn't have to hear about it. And that's what people don't like. People are tired of hearing about it. People are tired of it. Like, no one wants to hear about these NIL deals, and no one wants to hear about how guys are shaking down colleges for visits and shaking down colleges for, you know, I'm going to enter the portal unless you give me X. No one wants to hear about that. Like, that's the thing that's not good. And that is like, that conversation now is never going away. It's always going to exist. And that is the problem with college football right now. It's not that what they're doing is unfair for anyone. It's not that what they're doing is, like, you look at, like, okay, players can transfer, right? Like, why shouldn't they be able to? Coaches can, right? Any other student can just leave whenever they want. They absolutely can. But it makes for a bad entertainment product. It makes for it creates bad sentiment within fans, and fans drive the sport. So that's kind of where it is. Like, it's unfortunate, but man, they're going down a path where all the headlines you hear about college football, especially in the offseason, are just like, man, this sucks. I hate hearing about this. I want to talk about anything else.
I think, you know what? I totally agree with that point. And let me just throw on top of it that because Notre Dame doesn't dip in the same waters. You know, I mean, they don't dive right in. I mean, they dip their toe, but they're not in the same waters as a lot of the other schools. And they have so many guys that are like, want the degree and stay, and like, you know, they're not looking for the way out, right? Like, that's why even like the tight end who left for Tennessee, now I'm just forgetting his name, but Holden Stays. So Holden Stays, like, that was like, what? That never happens at Notre Dame. And not to say he might end up being like a great player for Tennessee, but there's just way more Eli Reardons out there who was like, well, Eli Reardon could probably go somewhere and start somewhere else if he wanted right now. He could. right? But it's like, well, there's more guys that are, at Notre Dame that are like Eli Reardon,
Yeah.
and because of that, I think that's why I understand why Notre Dame fans might be like, oh God, the whole sport is all this and that. But it's like, I mean, Notre Dame, they haven't changed that much. It really hasn't that
Yeah.
much. And so I just think like maybe if you are some of these other teams, maybe you would get, a little bit disenchanted, but like maybe that's something that makes Notre Dame more attractive to people as fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brad Klostermeyer, he's tired of hearing about NFL or NIL. Just stop talking about it. It kills people's interest. Keep it, pay them, whatever, but the media needs to stop obsessing. Vamos Irish says, you might hate it, but it drives clicks more than anything else. TMZification of the sport. And then Brad comes back with Dion drives clicks, but it's not helping the sport either. Like, I agree with that. Like, the Deion Sanders thing is way too much. It's way too much for a 4-8 coach, right? It's just, but it's like that's what it is, right? Like it is driving clicks. And like the off-season stuff, like all of the this is all the Athletic focuses on. All off-season. All of their reporters are just playoffs, NIL, like all that stuff. All of the background things that the general fan just doesn't want to care about. You just don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you know what? I totally think Brad's, both Brad and Vamos's Irish's takes are totally fair.
Yeah.
Their opinions on it are totally fair. But like, I mean, people are talking about it because some of the coaches are saying stuff like this, and that's why CFP Hertz asked the question. Because I mean, I don't think we've ever started a show where we're like, well, today we're talking about NIL. Like, no, we don't want to talk about it. But if someone asks us about it, we'll give our opinion.
Yeah. But it does. It does drive clicks. And clicks are important for a website, Jamie. And if you want to start a website that gets clicks, but you don't know where to start, then you know what you can do? You can go to Ben Marketing. If you're ready for a new website, not sure where to start, let the experts at Ben Marketing help. With experience and with Fortune 500 companies and small businesses alike, they'll build you a stunning website and take care of all the marketing tasks, ergo getting clicks, so that you can focus on running your business. No more stress. Just leave it to the experts at Bend Marketing. Visit bendyourmarketing.com/ISD to get started. Don't forget to mention ISD to enjoy 10% off your first project. There's Rajon. There's my guy. We're mid-season form over here. Okay, Iris Nut. Next question. Let's go bring it up. Frank and Jamie have said in the last 2 power hours that Notre Dame recruiting of offensive linemen has left them in a bad situation this year. But I can't remember in the last couple years that have been down on that you've been down on who Notre Dame got. What's changed? Has Rudolph not coached up the players, or have the boys just not improved?
Well, I mean, because the thing is offensive line, it's not about who you just got. That's really the main thing, right? Is that the best offensive lines in the country are every year are made up in 4th and 5th year guys, and there are some exceptional guys who play early, and that's definitely a thing. Joe Alt, Quentin Nelson, Ronnie Sandley, Zach Martin, etc. Right? Like, there's that thing, but there's still a lot of other guys that, like you look at, you want guys to be there to have that kind of like. Liam Eichenberg was a way better player as a 5th-year senior than he was a 1st-year starter as a 3rd-year player, right? Like, that's just what it is. Same with Robert Hainsey, who played early. He played as a freshman, but he was a much better player in his 4th year than he was in his 1st year. And that's just how it is. And that's who like wins the Joe Moore Award too, right? So when we're talking about that kind of thing, and 5th quarter Irish, he had like kind of listed some reasons in there and whatever. And I thought he brought up some good points. So I'll just kind of, I don't mean to just totally steal everything he said, but I think he brought up some good points that, really the 2020 class, which would be fifth year in the 2021 class. So, I mean, it just so happens that Notre Dame had two tackles in the 2021 class who were both really good players, obviously. And, one of the guys was a top 5 pick. Well, they left after 3 years. So because of that, that's why Notre Dame's in a bind at tackle right now, because instead of those guys being 4th year guys, I mean, none of those other guys who were first round picks for Notre Dame left after 3 years.
Yeah.
None of those other guys. So they're like the first 3-year guys in probably a long, long time. I don't even know if Notre Dame's ever had a 3-year lineman. And frankly, it just doesn't happen that often, period. Right. Like, other than like some just like freakazoid Alabama and Georgia guys, right? Like, it's just not something that happens too often. And really, like, a guy like Blake Fisher would have stayed maybe an extra year before, but I mean, he had it in his mind that he was going to go already. I mean, he went in the second round, so he can't complain. So, I mean, that's part of it. And then the 2020 class, they took Carmody, and that was obviously a big miss. And then, Tosh Baker isn't that guy. Like, he's maybe he'll start this year or whatever, but I mean, he's in his 5th year and he's never started. So, and they only took 2 guys that year, right? And if you think about it, you could even go back to saying like, well, the 2019 class, I mean, it didn't really work out well, right? That was not a great class for Notre Dame. And so that class didn't work out well. And you got to kind of recognize it early and be like, man, these guys aren't what we thought. So what they should have done after that 2019 class has been like, well, these guys are this. We need to, like, we thought we were only signing 2 in 2020. We need 4, and they didn't approach it like that. And they tried to sign 3, like they tried to get Jonah Monheim, at the end there. And Monheim is still like, he's a good player for USC, right? Like, he's been a, multi-year starter. He's going to play in the NFL, right? Like, and that's the thing. It's just like one guy where you miss. It's like, if they could have got Monheim, then all of a sudden you're like, well, you know what? Notre Dame, think about if you just inserted Jonah Monheim onto Notre Dame's O-line this year, you're like, wow, you feel a lot better about where Notre Dame is at, so that's just kind of what it is, right? That's just that's kind of how they got into that spot. And you can even look at just like, they tried to, like, oh, maybe we can flip Will Campbell, late in the, who's LSU's left tackle, right? Who's going to be like a top pick. And they didn't, right? And so it's like, well, if they got Will Campbell there, and then they didn't get Elijah Page, who is going to start. And I don't know how good Elijah Page is going to be this year for USC. He's going to start for them at left tackle, but I think he's going to play in the NFL. And I was a big fan of his game. I thought he was going to be a very good player for Notre Dame. So they didn't take him, and they didn't get, they screwed up with the kid who went to Georgia. God, his name escapes me right now, but the other tackle who went there, who they were just like, we don't know if we want to get an extra tackle. Well, then when they lost Elijah Page, it was just, that's how they ended up. Monroe Freeling. Thanks, CFB Hurts. So yeah. So it's like just one or two little things. That's how you end up there. So I don't think it has anything to do with Joe Rudolph not coaching up the players. I just think if you look at where they're at age-wise, in terms of just where they're at on the roster right now, like, they're young. They're really young on the offensive line. And you also just can't find too many guys that are like grad transfers that you could just plug in there and start and be like better or have a higher ceiling than the guys that Notre Dame already has. So it's just what it is. That's kind of why they've been there. And it's why recruiting, it's like, we talk about it and we always emphasize these things. And it's just like, so many times it comes back to bite you when you miss some of these things, where they make these decisions. Like, it's why that, like, when Mike talks about it, especially, like, he like doesn't let it go, because he's witnessed it enough over the years, as the long time that he's been covering the team and covering recruiting for Notre Dame, where he's seen it come back and bite them. And I mean, I think that's kind of the case this year, where and the only way to kind of change that not being the case is for have these young guys, Wagner, Juggy Saw, maybe even Gerby Lambert, whatever, right? Just develop.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can't be over because look, Notre Dame has missed on O linemen before. They have, right? Going back years. The biggest thing is the point that you made at the beginning. Like, you had your 2 tackles leave after their true junior seasons. That never happens. It never happens. Imagine if Nelson and McGlinchey leave after 2016. Where is that 2017 line? They're in trouble. They're in trouble.
Yeah.
They're in big trouble. I mean, you had no one behind McGlinchey who was ready to go. Nobody. And so imagine that happening, right? Like, you could have, who are you going to play at guard in place of Q in 2017? It just, like, they stayed for their senior years, and then that allowed that team to go on.
Won the Joe Moore Award.
Yeah, they won the Joe Moore Award, and then that allowed an extra year for Eichenberg to get ready to go, for Bars, for Banks in 2018. Like, it allowed for that to happen. Whereas, like, you're going to have Robert Hainsey? Like, he would have been your left tackle, full-time left tackle in 2017. Like, it went poorly against Georgia with Mike McGlinchey in there. What would that look like with Robert Hainsey and Tommy Kramer on the other side? Like, it just would have been so much worse. And I think that, like, Notre Dame has missed, yes, but really what it is like they just had really one generational guy. And then it's like Fisher leaves, which, I mean, given all the guys who stayed and hung around, like, for him to be the one who leaves is just kind of like, okay, like, all right. Like, everyone else was in a better position than he was. Now, granted, look, he went to the NFL with a 2nd round pick. It's fine. It's not a criticism. I'm just saying, like, that's the difference between, them being in a really good place this year and then kind of being in trouble, right? So that's the kind of the situation there. They're in a tough spot. It is a big year for Rudolph, as Raymond Horton says, or Harton says. It's a big year for him and the development of these questions. So, next question. Xer ND 1994. Given the playoff format, what is something you think people are not talking about enough with teams if they will need to win? Example, I think the fact that teams have to play 15, 16, and even 17 games. The team that loses a conference championship has to play 17 games to win a national championship. That people are not talking enough about the depth on both lines you need to win.
I mean, I don't think people are really talking. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that kind of the playoff, the grind of that period, really. So which I actually kind of think is fine because we're so far away from it. Like, let's get to that part of the race first before we start really kind of diving into it. But I think he brings up a good point about the depth, because really, like, that is going to be huge, right? That is going to be huge because it's very rare that you're going to have, full health the whole way for everyone up front. And you need to have that depth, right? And I mean, a lot of it too, like if you look at like the success of last year's defense, if say Mills or Cross wasn't healthy, and I know these guys played through injury, so it's not like just that, but I'm just saying, like, if they weren't healthy enough to play, that would change the dynamics of the defense, right? And it's all of these things. So even look at like where last year was Notre Dame at corner, where Pitt wasn't a good team last year. I get it. But like Cam Harden and Benjamin Morrison didn't play that game. And then it was like, well, the defense still dominated, partly because of, they weren't playing a good offense. But the other part was like the guys who stepped in, Mickey and Gray, were really good. Right. Yeah. So, or even the fact that you look at like Thomas Harper missed a game last year, and then we can put in Clarence Lewis for a game. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, and maybe you don't want him the whole year, but for a game, he could be fine for this game or whatever, right? So all these kind of things can add up, and I really think depth is going to matter. Which also too, when I think about it, especially for the defensive line this year, you have to. I think Cross especially has to play a little bit less this year in terms of percentage to keep the guy a little bit fresher. Because I know they probably needed him to play that much last year, but it's like it'd be ideal if they didn't have to play him as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other part of it is like the depth for sure. I think the other part of it is that it's the playoffs have always kind of been like you get a month to prepare for all of that. And when the playoffs start, you don't get that. And it becomes week to week. And I think that is, I've always felt like Notre Dame, because they didn't have the analyst operation that other teams have, and just kind of that professional kind of, should I say front office, a football program, just the professionalization,
personnel department,
personnel department that these other schools have, that I felt like they were always in a disadvantage when teams got a month to prepare for them. Whereas now it's like you play the 5-12 game and then it's week to week. I feel like that's to Notre Dame's advantage. And I think that could negate some of the stuff with, some of these bigger programs against some of the smaller schools where it's like, oh man, we can put all our resources to one opponent specifically for X amount of time. And I feel like that's going to be a benefit to some teams, just the week to week nature of it. So that'll be something to monitor as well. I think that favors the underdog, Rajon. I think it favors the underdog because usually the underdog is the team without that big operation, because the big operations are usually the favorite. So whoever doesn't have that kind of professional, personnel department will be favored in that situation. All right, Duke Sinatra. Is there a current or recent Notre Dame player who most outperformed what you projected him to be as a recruit? A first one for me that came to mind is probably Ian Book. I mean, I thought he could help, right? I thought he could be a guy who came in and started and won a game like he kind of did in 2017 against North Carolina. Like I thought that would be his career. I did not think that he would take the program to 2 playoff appearances like that and win the most games in Notre Dame history. So he's one. Another one is I did not think that Tony Jones Jr. would be anything other than better than Sebo, right? Like better than Sebo, but like never. He's not going to be like Notre Dame's lead back, and they're going to be like good with him. And then he ended up putting up like really good numbers in 2019 when he wasn't hurt. Obviously, he had the great bowl game. He had a great game against USC, ran for about 176, I believe it was. So he's a guy where it's like I didn't have high expectations for him, and he did really well. So I would say Ian Book and Tony Jones Jr.
I mean, Ian Book is a great one just because just everything there. I mean, I'll say this too. Like I'm looking at some of these years, and some of these guys who like hit big, like that people were low on. I was kind of high on them, so it kind of worked out good for me. Like so, Rajon Mitchell Evans, like I love Mitchell Evans. Like I give him a 92. I have him as a 4-star, and he's been great. So I mean, win for me there. But like I think Tommy Tremble, who I liked, I was like, yeah, this guy can play. I had no idea he was going to be like that impactful of a blocker, or like just an absolute weapon in the running game with the way he was. I mean, Jacob Paul's brought up Kurt Heinrich. I thought Kurt Heinrich was totally going to be like a heart and soul guy who was going to be like, probably a guy who plays in the rotation and just like is pretty, a solid kind of second team nose guard. I thought that was going to be, but I'm like, he had a lot of, weight to gain and stuff. And that guy came in right away and put in work. He put in so much work, and obviously made himself into an NFL player. I mean, he was far better than I, thought he was going to be. So I think, he's someone that was, couldn't have been a greater example of a guy who like overachieved and kind of like blew away expectations and was like a great example of that for Notre Dame.
Yeah. All right. Next question. What position is the hardest to evaluate when evaluating high school recruits?
When quarterback's always the hardest because it's just like so many guys have like the physical skills. There's so many guys who's like, this guy's got a big time arm. This guy's got arm talent. This guy's a great athlete. There's so many other things that go into playing quarterback. And the training that the guys get, that how tough they are mentally. Like, I mean, you would have just thought there's so many things about Phil Dracovic that would have said, man, this guy was like led them to state championships, was an elite basketball player, was like the guy at his school and was like the guy in the state of Pennsylvania. And you're like, this guy just has it. He's got it. He's going to be that. And then he was like, I was still like in on that, just thinking that like, even when he was like throwing worm burners at a Elite 11, when Matt and I watched him in Cleveland, and we were still kind of in on him. We're like, I just had a bad day, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But really, I mean, he was a guy who just kind of, there were things there that he didn't have that, he never had to deal with adversity, really. And it was like, as soon as that came, that was it for him, right? So I think that's one of those things, because there's so much pressure on the quarterback position that it's really hard. And I think that you can't, like, where so many other positions you can look at, obviously, you're scouting all these things and looking for like certain traits at different positions. But you can always have like these testing markers and like size and measurements and all these kind of things that you can look at, like, well, that's going to go a long way in determining, how good a guy can be, because there's just only so few exceptions to, you're not going to get too many guys who run a 4.8 as a corner in high school that end up being an elite corner in college, right? So there's very few, defensive ends that are like, this guy's got like pterodactyl arms, and all of a sudden he's going to be a great pass rusher, right? So there's markers there, but like with quarterback, I mean, the guy can be 6'6", or 6'4", freak athlete, 220 pounds, all this kind of stuff, got a rocket launcher for an arm and all this, and then just like mentally wilt, right? I mean, and it doesn't matter, what the testing is and stuff. Right. So I think quarterback, I just don't even think there's anything close to it.
I mean, it's like you just look at like Ian Book as a prospect, going back to him, and Phil Dracovic as a prospect.
Yeah.
Like 100% you're taking Phil Dracovic every single time, right? I mean, look, Ian Book had good film, but it's like lots of guys in high school look like him, right? Lots of guys. But then he gets to Notre Dame and he just has a quality where it's just like, I'm going to make it happen. I will find a way in my third year. I'm not going to transfer. I'm going to stay and I'm going to get my chance. And then you get it. And he goes and he runs with it, right? And Dracovic did not have that, right? He has shown, not just at Notre Dame, but at other places. Like it was too much for him. And so it's just like, that's the piece that you don't know. There's the physical, but there's also like, how is this person going to handle this position? You just don't know. It's very hard to kind of project that sort of thing. So I would say that. And then offensive line for me, they all kind of look the same. I mean, sometimes you can see a guy who's like, man, he's stiff. He can't move. But a lot of them are just like, yeah, man, looks good. Great. Like good block against that 240-pound guy. It's really enjoyed that pancake for the 8th time here. I don't know if you're good though. So, but that's why we have the Yama, right? That's why we have Jamie University to teach us about this sort of thing. Last question from Duke Sinatra. Thoughts on the early signing period starting in 2025? Per Football Scoop, there will be an early signing period in June 2025. Thank you. What do you think, Jamie?
Well, shout out John Bryce for reporting that
JB.
as well, our good buddy JB. But I mean, I think it's probably, you can look at it as like, yeah, this is a good thing for Notre Dame, the way they've got their the way things are set up for them in terms of like having all these early commits, and then they can kind of move on to the next class per se or whatever, which they already kind of do, really, right? But at the same time, I think it's one of those things where, because of the portal and because of like you even saw this year with like Julian saying, just being like, well, you know, DeBoer's coming in there, it's different guys there, whatever, I'm out, right? Like, things, someone could sign in June and then be like, and then in like, maybe not August, but oh geez, well, who knows, maybe even August, but like people might just say like, I regret it, I want out. Well, they're gonna let them out, right? So it's just, that's the one thing too, is like, there's no harm in anyone signing now at that time, because it does really like secure your spot. And then, because they're not going to just drop you out of that when you just signed at that point, maybe later on, when things get whatever, but like, it's just still going to, and there's still going to be tampering and all that. So I don't know. I mean, ultimately good for Notre Dame, I guess, but I mean, I still think there's going to be still, you know, guys trying to pull, you know, Vanderdos type stuff.
Yeah. I think what you could see, because of what you just said, Jamie, is fewer committable offers, because they can't move on from you. You know, you have a guy, it's like, hey, we like him now, but we kind of want to see, but we want to get him in fold, but we kind of want to see a senior year. And if that guy wants to be like, yeah, I'm signed right now, like, whoa, right? Like, I don't know if we're ready for that. So you might see fewer committable offers for some of these guys, like early on in the class. Like, that's probably where this goes. It's like Notre Dame likes to fill up their class committed by like August. There might be less of that, right? Like, they might want to have more senior evaluations because now guys are getting locked in June, which is different than the commitment, as we all know, right? And also, like, you just might see fewer commitments from players, right? Like, I think they might be thinking, well, I'm going to say this, but like, if June comes and you don't commit to if you don't sign, like, let's say Deuce Knight, right? If June came and that signing day period came and he did not sign, that'd be a pretty big deal, right? Like, anyone would be like, hey, like, sharks are in the water now. Like, we're coming after him.
Also, if you're Notre Dame, you're looking for another quarterback right away.
Exactly. Right. Like, everything is scrambling. And so I think that it just kind of, people say like, oh no, you know, just the guys who are shirts, whatever. But like, that's not how it works. They are going to be pushing these guys to like, okay, sign then, right? We want you committed, then sign. Why wouldn't you sign if you're committed, right? And so I just think it's again, it's they're solving a problem that that didn't really exist, right? It just I don't know. It's they're just adding more chaos to a chaotic situation, in my opinion. It just doesn't help. You want to be able to make things easier, not more complicated. And I feel like that's not the direction they're going, that they're going in the opposite direction of that. We all want things to be easier, right? And when we're looking for a media company to make things easier, to create our highlight reels, to create our stories, our video stories. Maybe you're getting engaged. Maybe your kid is getting ready for a dance or some sort of family reunion, and you want some video of this. Your child is playing sports. We want a great highlight video package. You want to make it easy? Go to VSR Media Company. Founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. A couple more questions. Funk Beavis asks, almost all of former college football players that went on to star in professional wrestling were undersized D tackles. Goldberg, The Rock, Joe Anae. Any chance Howard Cross could be the next great one?
I mean, he was a better football player than all those guys. So, I mean, I love the question, though.
Probably
I
be a
love the
pro
question.
football player. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's it? I mean, well, Parker Boudreaux, he was an undersized D tackle, but he was an undersized guard. So Notre Dame did have someone go professional wrestling.
I mean, a lot of the guys are guys who just like they weren't good enough, right?
Vernon, I could see him being a professional wrestler.
Yeah, he definitely. I mean, he's got the kind of gimmick. Like he would probably be. He could play like the Undertaker's son or something. Like
yeah, he
fits the part for sure. First, I just love this question. This is a great question. But
I can see Jason Anye being a guy, right?
Oh, he talks a lot too.
Yeah. He's got the gab for it, right?
I mean, I'll say if Blake Fisher, he'll probably play in the NFL for a long time, but if it doesn't work out, he's a guy who he talks a lot. Like he could be one of these guys, like, so I think it's whatever. It's so much of it. The other thing is though, it's like, man, it's a grind. It's a real grind. So, it's
not the easiest lifestyle for sure.
Yeah. It's a tough, and I think even like Goldberg didn't really go through the grind. If you're looking at like the hardcore wrestling things, he was kind of a guy who just popped in for whatever.
Get that degree, boys. BVZ, the lack of numbers at the Viper position in recruiting has been mentioned a lot on ISD podcasts, but at the same time, the linebacker recruiting has been so good that we are left wondering how many of them will see the field with our standard defense using just 2 linebackers most of the time. What do you think the chances are that the staff already knows it has some Vipers that are presently listed as linebackers? Just assuming it could be the case, which is of the 24-25 class linebackers, would you project as Vipers? This solution would take care of 2 birds with 1 stone. I think that's absolutely the case. Definitely. Who are you thinking of when this question gets asked?
Well, I mean, Dom Hulak, I think they've just told him he's going to be a Viper.
Yeah.
So that's happening, which I think was kind of, it's so funny too, because they always are like, yeah, he's going to be this. They always do this where they're like, oh yeah, he's going to be this. And then it's like, no, he's going to be a Viper or whatever. Yeah, he's going to be a Viper. Like that's what's going to happen unless they like change their mind in the time between. But I think as of right now, like he's probably going to be a Viper. And that's, so he's one guy. I don't know if they might add somebody else in the class. I think they easily could. We'll see. I mean, it's not out of the question that either one of the Kia brothers could end up there. If you're looking at it kind of long-term, like that could be something. I wouldn't say it's likely, but like it could. Obviously Kanu like was briefly a Viper before he left on his mission. I think 24 class, like I can't remember if did I mention this in the last podcast about Bodie Cahoon?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Like he's 100% a guy that I could just, I mean, obviously it depends how long he is and whatever. Like, I believe he's 6'2". I don't know how long he is and all that, but like he is, lacrosse player, like fluid athlete, like explosiveness. I think he has the frame. He's going to be a pretty big kid. Like there's a lot of like Josh Burnham to him, and he's probably maybe even a little bit more fluid than him. So like, I think that, he could be someone that could, that could move there. I mean, I mentioned Zinter way back when he signed, but I just kind of have a feeling like he'll stay at linebacker. But yeah, out of the most recent class, like Cahoon would be that. But the other thing is weight wise, I mean, he has to put on a lot of weight. But Rizak is long as heck. Like, he is extremely long, and he's a very good athlete. And just like, that's one of those weird ones where you're like, man, this guy's like playing safety, but like, I wouldn't put it past him. Like, he would have to do a lot of work in the weight room, but I don't think it's like crazy to think that he could end up there.
Yeah. So I just think they have so many options and athletes to do it. So like, everyone is kind of worried about Viper. I am very much not. Like, I am not concerned. I think their edge rushing is going to be very good for the foreseeable future. So it's just like, I think BVZ is on the right track with it too. They just have a lot of guys that project to put on weight. I mean, look at what they did with Burnham and Tuihalamaka. They're already doing that, right? And obviously they like that situation. So that'll be good. All right. Last question from Oscar. Vamos, Irish. Here we go. May is named after the Roman goddess Maya, the goddess of spring and growth. Maya is also the mother of Hermes, the messenger of the gods, heralding news to all. The Irish faithful obviously hope that Maya's blessings will provide growth to the O-line and add some spring to the wide receiver group. What other group do you wish to be bestowed Maya's blessings of growth? Jamie, I'll start with you.
I mean, Vamos Irish just always takes it up an extra notch.
How does he come up with this? How does he come up with it?
I feel like he just looked up. I mean, to be fair, he probably Googled May, the month of May, and then this came up in the Wikipedia. But no, I want to give him more credit than that. But still, this is still it's great that how he brings it back into something. Love it. Yes, and as he says in the chat, growth from spring practice to fall practice. So to kind of clarify that, I would think that quarterback and Riley Leonard, him working with the receivers. Yeah, I mean, obviously he didn't get much of a spring practice, so that's significant. I think that I think would be, you would want some Maya's blessings there, and I think you'd also want Maya's blessings in terms of Rod Hurd joining in and being like, okay, getting comfortable in the secondary and finding his fit and all that too. So those would be my two.
I love the Leonard and I love the Rod Hurd. I'm going to go with Gabe Rubio. He needs blessings.
Another good one.
He needs the blessings of the Roman goddess. He wasn't around, right? Didn't get any spring ball. Who knows what kind of shape he's in? Who knows where he's at? Notre Dame needs him to have some growth, I think, as a player and emotionally as well. Wasn't on the part of the university, part of the football team in the spring, because everything was going great, right? And so let's just get some growth in there, right? Let's ascend as a human being, both as a football player and everything else. Not like a bad guy or anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, let's get things on the up and up for Gabe Rubio. It's very important. D tackle. He's going to be needed in 25 as well. So let's do that. All right. Hermes is on the edge of his seat to speak truth far and wide about what to expect from the Fighting Irish. However, Zeus has limited him to only speaking truth to one game. What will that statement game be to the entire world, and what is the message that Hermes will spread?
I mean, I'll let you go first because the obvious choice is A&M, but
no, I'm going to go the end. I'm going USC. We've talked about it a ton. No, they just don't play great in LA at the end of the year. They just don't. They haven't. They've won games, as we pointed out. They've won games, but they haven't looked like a dominant team kind of ever in the Coliseum. And that is the statement to the entire world that things are different in 2024 for Notre Dame. You go in there, you blow the doors off the Trojans, you end Lincoln Riley's career at USC, and you say, going into the playoffs, this is a real team. Notre Dame's ready to make a statement to the world in the playoffs. That's mine.
Phenomenal choice. Just a great choice. I love that. Makes sense for so many reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, I think A&M is just one of those ones because it is the default one, and it kind of it has to be a statement in some way because they don't play a high profile game again, if you want to call it that, until Louisville on September 28th. And that game is on Peacock. So this is A&M is a nationally televised game, primetime game, big game of the day, I believe. I mean, I haven't looked at the total schedule, but I believe it's probably one of the biggest games at the very least in that opening, that opening week. Right? Primetime ABC, a lot of eyeballs there. Mike Elko's first game. It's like one of those games where it's a huge overreaction game, much like the Texas game was, much like that Florida State game was, where Notre Dame's opening up the road, much like Texas in 2015 was. Like those games get over analyzed and they're saying this is what it is. So if Notre Dame goes in there and puts it on, A&M wins convincingly, that is a statement that I think, kind of sets them up the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think your answer was great, Greg. I totally agree with that too. But I'll also say too, that Florida State game, because if you look at Florida State's schedule, I think they're like, I believe Florida State's 13th or something, 12th or 13th in the
SP Plus. Yeah, they're 12th.
Projections, right? They're 12th, right? So, Notre Dame is 10th. I do think like Florida State could be worse than that, but there's a chance that they could be just that. And if like as good as that, or kind of fringe top 10 too, because they have a lot of young talent that's coming up, and I think they're going to be good on both lines, and that can carry them a long way, especially against their schedule, which is a pretty easy schedule for the most part. They don't play like super tough games for like most of the season. Like that game against Notre Dame is their toughest game, by far of the season in terms of in the road game. Like they have Clemson at home, right? They have Clemson at home. They have Miami on the road, and they're probably going to have 1 or 0 losses heading into that game. So that's going to be a big game. It's going to be, I assume it's going to be a night game. That's going to be pretty hyped up. And that is the kind of thing where if Notre Dame has 0 or 1 loss, that is a statement game there where all of a sudden it's like, well, it's going to be watched. It's going to be talked about. And if you put it on, FSU in that game, that also just kind of propels them there too. But I just to say I'm jealous of that the USC pick and how you frame that, because I think that's really like probably the best choice of them all.
I mean, we could bookend, right? The start and the finish. We could bookend that. It makes sense too. Last question from Vamos. He said it optional, but we'll put it in there. What is your favorite food originating from the land of the Romans? You can limit yourself to Rome, to Italy, or the entirety of the Roman Empire. Your choice. Do you have one?
First of all, have you ever been to Rome?
No.
You should go. It's great. It's wonderful. I've been actually a couple of times. Once for my honeymoon. I went to Italy with my wife for my honeymoon. We love Rome. Phenomenal food city. And I'm just gonna say though, gelato. Like the gelato in Rome. First of all, there's just like no guilt. Everyone eats gelato like all day. You multiple times a day you can have ice cream. You have ice cream multiple times a day, and there's no guilt about it. And it's super friggin' hot, so it's just you walk around a lot, so you just burn it off.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. Obviously, the gelato's better in Rome than it is anywhere else I've had it. So I'm gonna go gelato.
I've never been, right, so I can't say. I would say for the Italian thing, pasta carbonara to me is just like the most decadent thing you could have, and it's I don't make it. I've made it before. I have not made it recently. But having like authentic like that would just be great. So that's always what I think when I think of like Rome or Italy or whatever it might be. Just the Italian dish. I always think of pasta carbonara. I'm always thinking of that. So that really gets me going. So that's going to end it for Oscar's questions, and that's going to end it for our show today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit the like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is we are going live. We'll be back next week with more Notre Dame football talk. Good job by everyone today. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.